Welcome to Reycraft Read Alouds. Reycraft Books is a children's trade book imprint focused primarily on publishing books by authors and illustrators from underrepresented communities. To learn more about our books, visit us at www.raycraftbooks.com. In addition, go to our YouTube channel for more read alouds, book trailers, and video interviews with our authors and illustrators. This month's featured read aloud is Tea with an Old Giant, written by New York Times bestselling author Jane Yolen and illustrated by Paolo Domeniconi. Tea with an Old Giant. The old giant lived at the top of a steep rocky hill. He chose that place because it was far away from anyone else. From his hilltop, he saw the mountains and the sea and the tan-lined beach where they met. He watched the sun going down at night and the little boats returning home, their white sails looking as if they were on fire. But now the old giant was lonely and tired. He was tired of pretending by himself, tired of playing checkers by himself, tired of reading aloud to himself, tired of singing both the soprano and the bass parts in all the songs. His knees ached in the morning and his back ached at night. He had to make his own tea. So one day, the old giant took his walking stick, which had been carved out of a pine tree even older than he was, and he went down the steep rocky hill, careful not to trip or fall because, after all, who could have picked him up? He went down to the beach, careful not to get too near the water, because he couldn't swim, and, after all, who could have rescued him? And he walked until he came to a small town with small houses, a small dance hall, a small general store, a small church, and an even smaller barber shop. Pets and people ran away screaming. It was a commotion and a pother. Well, the people screamed, the dogs just howled and then raced off, their tails between their legs. A few cats slinked away as well, and the horses rose up whinnying and then ran away with their carriages and saddles and even the long harness poles some of them had been tied to. No one in town had ever seen such a fuss. Well, no one in town was still around to see it after all. Still, one person did. One small child. The only child in town. Her name was Arabella, and she did not run away. Her legs were too short, and her heart was too brave. She stared up and up and up at the old giant. She was used to everyone being bigger than she was, but she had never seen anyone quite so big. Even bent over a stick, the old giant was taller than any tree, taller than the church spire. Why, Arabella thought he might be tall enough to touch the sun or the moon, though of course he was not so tall as all that. The giant looked down and down and down at the child. He was used to everyone being smaller than he was, but he had never seen anyone quite so small. She barely came up to his ankle. He leaned over. "Can you play checkers?" he asked. She smiled. No one in town had time to play checkers or anything at all with her, not even her mama and papa, who were always too busy running the barber shop. "Of course I can," she called up to the giant. She ran to the barber shop and brought out her checker set, regular checkers and Chinese checkers too. They sat down on the porch and played till the porch sagged underneath the giant's weight. Then Arabella taught the giant how to jump rope. At every landing, the buildings trembled as if there had been an earthquake. The giant read aloud to her from one of her storybooks. Then Arabella read another book back to him, back and forth, until they had read every single book Arabella owned. "I am parched," said the giant, and indeed his voice sounded like a scratchy desert filled with cactus. "If it is not too much trouble, may I have some tea?" So Arabella went back into the barber shop and up to the second floor where she lived with her mama and papa. She brought out her tea party set and 3 of her favorite dolls. Then Arabella, the old giant, and the 3 dolls sat on a blanket in front of the barber shop, drank water tea, and ate mud cookies. The old giant was good at pretending, and he never made a fuss about the water or the mud as some grown-ups do. I hope you have had a good time, said Arabella. I hope you come back for another visit. If you are lonely, you can have one of my dolls for company till I see you again. The giant stood up slowly. His bones creaked alarmingly like a barn door that needed oiling. Indeed I did, and indeed I will, and thanks very much, he said, clutching the largest of the dolls in his left hand where it had all but disappeared. He held his big walking stick in the right. But next time I will teach you some songs, and I will bring the tea. And he did. Thank you for joining me for Reycraft Read Alouds. I look forward to you joining me again next time, and happy reading.